Hello and welcome to Hamilton, the podcast. From the Graphomania Podcast Network, I'm Vinton Bain.
And I am Robbie Herlocker. Today we get to talk about some of the most happy songs in this mixtape, right, Vinton?
Yeah, so happy I forgot the smile. That's the thing that the kids say, right?
I have never heard a kid say that. So we've said it before and we'll say it again. You cannot build up an immunity to the song It's Quiet Uptown.
You can't. I tried real hard and I failed.
Right. You either just do not have the emotional bone that causes you to cry when you hear sad things, or you will cry every time you hear this song.
That is accurate.
Before we dive into the specifics of this track, I do want to point out something from the last episode when we talked about the open letter to John Adams. We put it out there that we were kind of curious what a lot of our listeners thought about that line about the spies, right?
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton says to John Adams, maybe the spies all around me, maybe they can confirm that I don't care if I kill my career with this letter, I'm confining you to one term. And we discussed how we weren't totally certain exactly what the reference to the spies was.
Right. We made some guesses.
But one of our friends on Twitter, Janine, was listening to the episode, tweeting back to us, and she said, hey, my husband has a really good point on this. And so he got back, and Jeff, her husband, told us, hey, my theory is that this is a reference to the Aliens and Seditions Act, right?
Yeah.
So that was the act that we've talked about on this podcast before, where John Adams used it to silence his enemies, saying, hey, you can't speak badly against me as the president. You can't speak badly about our country. We'll consider it treasonous. We'll consider it libel. We'll do whatever. And so he had that tool out there to silence the free presses and to try to suppress a lot of opposition to him. And so I thought, well, first of all, I thought, man, why didn't I think of that before we recorded our episode? But then I thought that's actually really clever. So I thought that I'd share that with everyone because that's an important theory, and I think that's worthwhile.
Definitely so. Yeah. Thank you for that theory.
That contribution. If you have any thoughts on the stuff that we discussed throughout this review of the mixtape, or if you have anything when you're listening to older episodes or just diving into Hamilton, if you have thoughts on Hamilton lyrics or lyrics from the mixtape, make sure you tweet to us at GraphoCast or at our individual Twitter handles we'll give you later, but we would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just educated historical facts. We want to hear your opinions too. Just don't be mean guys, because we don't like having mean guys to deal with.
Mean guys are mean.
That's right.
But yeah, we love hearing people just gush about Hamilton because that's what we do. That's why we started this podcast. Definitely give us your emotions, give us your feels. We are ready for them. Now, having said that, I don't know how much more I can put off the sad feels of this song. I've been trying to avoid them.
Let's go start another podcast where we don't have to talk about It's Quiet Uptown.
This is the Feel Good Podcast?
Yes.
We only talk about happy endings.
We talk about good feels.
We just play the Hamilton mixtape, like the Hamilton album, backwards. No, that doesn't work.
Anything.
It doesn't work. Never mind. We play the first act and that's all.
So, It's Quiet Uptown is a cover on this mixtape by Kelly Clarkson, produced by Jason Halbert, who is Clarkson's music director. Now, Clarkson is a singer-songwriter and occasional actress who won the first season of American Idol, as many of you might know.
I mean, that was one of the best seasons of American Idol.
That's right. She's gone on to win 3 Grammys and numerous other awards.
I actually got to see Kelly Clarkson perform a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, back in the day when my company was spending more money and when it was getting into some troubles.
I remember those days when I got to go see basketball games really up close.
Right, I got awesome Thunder tickets in Oklahoma City. We now have the ability to get into a lottery to win some of the tickets, but we have to split the cost, and so it's not totally free anymore, and so we don't go as often. But Kelly Clarkson came to one of our Christmas parties and got to sing for us while they had a huge show there, huge performance, open bar.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. You told me about this. That's right.
It was really neat to see her. She was pregnant at the time, actually, and so she didn't move around a lot on the stage or anything, but she is so talented. Her voice is gorgeous.
On that note, from Entertainment Weekly, I learned that one of the things she was talking about this song is when she got the email asking her to do it, she listened to the song and was just crying because she was like, I just had a child and you're asking me to do this song?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Can
It
you
was
imagine?
like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate all of it.
Yeah.
Why would you ask me to do this?
That you remember I showed you a letter that my dad wrote to the two of us when we had just released our episodes covering It's Quiet Uptown and that period of time in the musical when we covered that on an earlier episode. My dad sent a letter to me addressed to both of us talking about how emotional it was just to deal with Hamilton from the perspective of a parent, from the perspective of someone who thought that his son was going to die in childbirth. And so I can imagine Kelly Clarkson having to sing this song, trying to wrestle through the emotions of what it's like to lose a child. There are moments that the words don't reach, suffering too terrible to name. And so as she starts singing about holding her child as tight as she can, how could she not imagine holding her child as tight as she could in that moment?
Right. And I misspoke. I said that she had the baby, but she was still pregnant with the baby when she got this email. And she had said that she was so angry because she was pregnant with her son. And it's all about their son dying. And she said, I was a complete mess, but I was like, it's beautiful. I'll try to do it, but I can't promise you that I can get through the dang thing. And she said, you listen to a song and filter it how it affects your life. So it was so hard. It was literally the hardest thing I've ever done in a studio.
Wow. Because she's done a lot of things in a studio by now.
Definitely.
She's come a long ways since that first season of American Idol. She has done so much.
Now, on the bright side, there's almost nothing for us to talk about on this song because it is a cover song and it doesn't change too much. Being on the mixtape, references to characters have been taken out and small changes here and there musically, but nothing really big for us to comment on.
Yeah, so they take out a lot of the proper nouns. You talk about names themselves are often gone. But one of the things that made that confusing for me trying to listen through this, I listened to this track a number of times, more times than I should have for my emotional health, but I listened to this track a lot. The pronouns make it a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
When you turn this in, so my first issue with it as a cover, it's an amazing tribute to Hamilton the musical. It's an amazing cover. But when you turn it into a solo, it loses certain things. Because I appreciate that in a moment when Alexander and Eliza have lost their kid, they don't have the words to speak. And Angelica has to come in as the narrator for that moment to speak over what they're feeling. And in this song, since it's sang by one person in this cover, it's a little bit more confusing to see. Is she talking about pain she has, or is she talking about pain that she observes in someone else?
Oh, yeah.
Is she talking about the they that's experiencing pain, or the us that's experiencing pain?
Yeah.
And so in certain moments, it feels different to me as I listen to it. And it's probably just a little bit difficult for myself, having such a strong connection to the context of the musical, to take myself out of it just to hear this song, this cover of it, in its own context.
Yeah, trying to make it more of a mixtape type song that can stand on its own, you lose the story that goes along with it too. You lose the emotional weight that's carried up until that point, and then of course carried on past it. It's still a really emotional song, still gets me because I have all that in my head, definitely, but I don't know if you really would have that big of an emotional response to it if you had never heard Hamilton the musical.
Yeah, I'm curious if... I mean, obviously, if you listen to Hamilton the podcast, you've probably listened to Hamilton the musical. But if you know somebody who has never listened to Hamilton the musical, then first of all, you're not doing your job in evangelizing, to spreading the good news of Lin-Manuel Miranda to your friends well enough. But maybe share this tract with them, because I'm really curious to know how someone who doesn't have that background is affected by some of these covers and how they interpret it and how it sits with them. Because honestly, by this point, I need to just go to some of those people in my life that I know have not listened to it and will not listen to it for whatever reason. I need to try this experiment and see how it hits them, because it surely hits people differently than it does us here with our own baggage that we bring to the table.
Well, that covers that whole song pretty much. So let's go ahead and move on to our next song. That Would Be Enough, covered by Alicia Keys.
She's so good, isn't she?
She is. This is really fantastic.
I remember watching videos of Alicia Keys back when Carson Daly was on Total Request Live. I think it was those times of my life when I first kind of discovered Alicia Keys. And I remember just my jaw was dropped every time I'd see her sitting at the piano, playing and singing and just, man, she's emotional. She moves me.
She is phenomenal. And I mean, if you don't know who Alicia Keys, I guess I'm going to read this thing to you, but most likely you know, so you can just skip ahead 15 seconds. But
because it takes that long to cover how much she's done.
It does. Actually, even longer, but I'm going to try to summarize. Alicia Keys is a highly successful singer, songwriter, record producer, and actress. Throughout her career, she has won numerous awards, including 15 Grammys.
Only 15?
Grammys.
15 Grammy.
She's sold over 35 million albums and 30 million singles worldwide, and has been on about 1 million lists of like top 10 R&B, top 10 women in music, top 10 artists of all time.
Wow.
So tons of lists. I won't go through them all, but tons. Look them up. She is amazing. She's just, everyone thinks so. It's probably a universal fact, maybe.
You'd think that there would be a point in accumulating all of these awards where she would just say, look, that should be enough.
That would be enough.
That would be enough, because she doesn't need a legacy. She doesn't need money.
She already has that too.
So we just finished a song that was about coping with grief and how you try to find your new normal in life and how you try to just move on after a tragedy, right? You have a big thing hit you in life and you just have to find a way to move forward. I like the way that this mixtape put It Would Be Enough right after that song, because it's almost like while you're trying to find how you move forward in life, one of the things you can do, one of the strategies you have to kind of focus on is counting your blessings, looking at what you have to live for. You can't focus on the tragedy and dwell on the tragedy and dwell on the darkness that is there. You have to look around at how lucky you are to be alive sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to count what it is that you have going for you. Like, the fact that you're alive is a miracle. If you could stay alive, that would be enough. And she talks about the things throughout this song. Like, you've heard the lyrics. You've heard this song sung by Eliza before, and you now are hearing it sung by Alicia Keys as Eliza, so to speak. And she's singing about, like, you don't need a legacy to live for. You don't need money. You could just be at peace with what you have right now and have that quiet contentment and that strength of character to say that, yeah, I want something out of life. But what I want out of life is to be content, and I want to be happy, and I want to be comfortable. I want to have peace, and I just want to be a part of the narrative that my friends and family are creating in our community.
Yeah.
It's not about just rising up without end and trying to do the Alexander Hamilton thing of pursuing power and pursuing legacy to the detriment of your family, but instead saying, I have a family, I have friends, I have found family in my life, and that's what matters. And that is enough to live for. Sometimes I feel that tragedy and the darkness hitting me and trying to trap me and confine me and enslave me, but it is enough that I'm alive. It is enough that I have people I care about and that care about me. And it is enough that I have these things that I have counted as blessings in my life. And I'm going to consider that enough. And I'm not going to be afraid of what the future holds, because fear is not a good way to live your life.
That's good, solid life advice from Hamilton, the podcast. And we're not the only ones blown away here by Alicia Keys and her performance of this song. On Twitter, when Lin-Manuel Miranda first heard the song, he tweeted out, I just heard Alicia Keys' contribution to the Hamilton Mixtape, and I am flying through space somewhere. I cannot wait for you to hear it.
He's out of this world.
And speaking of that, in Entertainment Weekly, I keep quoting Entertainment Weekly here. It's a good resource. I did some good interviews, guys. He told them that when Alicia Keys agreed to do That Would Be Enough, she said that she didn't want to just send the song to him to check out. She wanted him to come to her studio and hear her play it live.
Oh, man.
So he looked at Jonathan Groff, who he was roommating with at the moment, and said, do you want to go see Alicia Keys play this song live?
What? Who wouldn't?
They jumped in the car. He said it was right at the beginning of the Great Blizzard of 2016. They headed over there and sitting in a room at midnight with Alicia Keys, not only hearing her amazing version of That Would Be Enough, but also half the tracks of her new album early.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Wow. I can only imagine. that would be enough for me to die happy right there. Like, just I think back to some of my college days, and honestly, even since college, my friend Rebecca, who was a guest on this podcast once, she would just sit at the piano and we just start doing sing-alongs, and she would just play through. Like, we sat and played Hamilton songs and just did a sing-along for her birthday this past year. Like, we all just sat around the piano. She just plucked around at the notes, and it was such a fun time to just engage with the live music with friends and family in an intimate setting. Like, this is the idea of being in a living room, making music with people close to you. And man, to have Alicia Keys doing that with you, I would die happy.
Now, this song is another cover, of course, and not much has changed here. So again, we don't have too much to talk about. Of course, there is the conversation between Eliza and Alexander from the original that's taken out here.
Right. That wouldn't make a lot of sense in the context of a mixtape.
Right. And then there's small changes, like instead of saying, and we could be enough, that would be enough, it says, and this could be enough, this would be enough. But other than that, nothing really of note.
I just love the encouragement of this song, that when someone's struggling, when someone is hurting, sometimes you don't have the perspective to be above the situation and see what there is to be proud of and to be happy about and what there is to celebrate. But the fact that Eliza is singing this to Alexander, or the fact that the narrator of this song on the mixtape is saying it to someone else. Look at where you are. Look at where you started. The fact that you're alive is a miracle. Just stay alive. That would be enough. To me, when you take this song out of the context of Eliza to Hamilton and just put it into the context of someone to their friend who is struggling in darkness, or is depressed, or is just really trapped in depression, that tells me that this song is a reminder of how important it is to encourage one another.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what it's like when someone's going through struggles, you don't know what they're going through all the time, you don't know what's happening inside their head, but sometimes just speaking to them encouragement can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And so, like I said it already, but the pairing of the previous song with this song makes all the difference in the world to me. You know there are people in your life that are struggling, and you may not see it, but if you're going out there just being a person of encouragement, a person who is willing to just speak encouragement and love to your friends, to the people you pass in the street, try to be a person who is going to tell people what really matters in life, and that there is enough that is worth them not only living for, but eventually fighting for and enjoying.
And that's one of the great things about the mixtape, is that it takes songs from this narrative and gives it a more broad perspective that we can relate to, and we can sing these songs out and they can mean more to us personally. Well, you can always do that with a narrative.
Yeah.
It is a little bit easier to do with just a song in general.
Of course.
Moving on to our next song. This is the one that we're going to focus on mostly here for this episode. Immigrants, We Get the Job Done.
Yes. This is one of the best songs on the mixtape. I say that about most of the original pieces on this mixtape, but this is a fan favorite, I think.
It has to be, and it's an original completely. Of course, they're just taking a few things, an idea basically from the musical and running with it. And it's so culturally relevant right now, as everyone listening to this knows.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, obviously the people writing this song knew that immigration was a hot topic. It was being debated during the campaign. It was something that, if you'll forgive the words, was bigly on the political scene at the time. And I mean, that's where they start this song. I know you'll want to get into some of the like high level artist information, but they start off with just a description that you would just hear from the news. Just, it gets into this whole issue of border security. Who's going to say the borders are secure? Like, it starts off almost like it's in the middle of a conversation.
Right.
Because America's already having this conversation. The world is having this conversation about immigration and about a world order, or about isolationism or patriotism or nationalism or welcoming borders. I mean, this conversation is ongoing and is hot, hot, hot. But even knowing all of that, none of them could have known about the events of President Donald J. Trump.
Right. They could not have seen where we are right now in this moment and everything going on.
The travel ban,
it's
everything.
so much more relevant than even they could have imagined. And they already imagined it was going to be completely irrelevant.
Right.
So this song is headed up by Kanon. It's featuring Residente, Riz MC, and Snow the Product. Produced by music producer, remix artist, and synthesist Truco. Kanon is a poet, rapper, singer, songwriter, and instrumentalist who rose to prominence with the success of his first single, Wavin' Flag, which was chosen as Coca-Cola's promotional anthem for the 2010 FIFA World Cup, which, that's kind of what everyone dreams of their first single getting, Coca-Cola's just like, we'll use that for something gigantic.
Right.
He was born in Somalia, but moved to Toronto during the Civil War. He learned English and how to rap by listening to Rakim and Nas.
I don't think I realized that. I didn't look into all of the artist information here. I didn't realize he was a Somalian immigrant there.
Yeah. Residente is known for his social-minded themes and political lyricism. He's a part of the group Calle 13 and recently discovered that he's actually Lin-Manuel Miranda's cousin.
What?
Yeah, I guess they were talking together, and I think if I remember the story correctly, he had Lin-Manuel Miranda come over to some family gathering, and his grandmother saw Lin and said, "You look just like this person." And Lin was like, "That's my grandpa." And she's like, "We're related."
What? How in the world?
So that was all after they'd been working together and doing stuff together that happened, which is really funny. He has won 25 Grammy Awards, which is the most Grammy ever awarded to a Latin artist.
Wow.
Riz MC is an English rapper and actor of Pakistani descent. He is well known for his roles as Nasir Khan. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. I haven't seen this series.
Khan!
I think that part's probably right.
Okay.
In the HBO television drama, The Night Of, and has appeared in Rogue One, for all of you that have seen Rogue One.
Can you believe I have not yet seen Rogue One?
You need to.
My
he
goodness.
does a good job. I like it. I like this character a lot.
Okay.
Also in Jason Bourne, Nightcrawler, Four Lions, Trishna, and more. He is a member of the hip-hop duo Sweatshop Boys, alongside rap artist Heems. And finally, Snow the Product is a Mexican-American rapper and singer, mostly known for her singles Holy She and Drunk Love, and her mixtape Good Nights and Bad Mornings.
Is that Holy She or Holy Shit?
Yeah, Holy Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it.
She released her first independent album, Unorthodox, in 2011 to positive reviews. Her first EP on Atlantic was released in June 2016, titled Halfway There Part 1. And there's so much talent on this, and people I didn't know. I didn't know, I think, any of these people before I had heard this, and so they were all new to me, and that's really cool. This is what a mixtape should do. It should introduce people to artists that they don't know, and it served that really well for me.
Yeah, this was one of the tracks that they released before the mixtape itself was released, remember?
Right.
And so it was what I was listening to on repeat over and over again before we even got the drop day of the Hamilton Mixtape. And so this one just leaves my jaw dropped each time I listen to it. I don't speak Spanish, and I probably could phonetically rap a lot of the Spanish just from having listened to it a bunch.
Yeah. Now, Lin-Manuel Miranda said about this concept, kind of like we already touched on, the election cycle has brought xenophobia and vilification of immigrants back to the forefront of U.S. politics. This is a musical counterweight. On the lineup, we have Kanon, Snow the Product, Riz MC, and Residente. Each MC culturally represents from a different place on the map. These are my favorite MCs from all over the world. They can speak to this theme from their brilliant perspectives. So another excerpt from Entertainment Weekly here.
Those are pretty entertaining.
Yeah. This song, obviously inspired by Immigrants, We Get the Job Done, was born out of a conversation between Miranda and Atlantic's vice president of A&R, Riggs Morales. Miranda said that Riggs and I are both Latino, and we were like, it would be amazing to find a way to get Residente, maybe the most famous Spanish language rapper, on the mixtape. I said, what if we do something around Immigrants, We Get the Job Done, that dialogue? It's such a highlight of our show. It gets a response every time from the audience. And then, speaking of this pro-immigration song being more relevant post-election, Kanon said that it's become more potent. It's more of a fight song.
This is my fight song. Lay down my life song. It's going to be in my head for a while.
And
Sorry.
Snow the Product said, now more than ever, we need to speak on these issues.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like you said, Robbie, it starts off with this sample at the beginning talking about immigration and how it has become a bad word, even though this was a country founded by immigrants.
Yeah, it's that language itself is important. I mean, obviously, immigration is a huge theme for Hamilton, an American musical. It's very clear that Alexander Hamilton is painted as an immigrant who comes over from the Caribbean islands, comes to New York. I once had someone tweet to me on Twitter that because that's where you tweet to people. It's on Twitter, obviously.
That's right.
But I had someone tweet to me that Hamilton wasn't an immigrant. He came from one British colony to another British colony. He was a citizen of Great Britain. And that's true, but he was still attacked as an immigrant,
Right.
as an outsider, because the colonists saw their country as, well, Virginia is their country, or New York is their country. And when you have an outsider from the Caribbean islands coming in and saying, I am here to be a part of you and to lead you, he got a lot of pushback. He was an immigrant who came over, and I mean, really, these types of things, we see colonization and immigration so differently, but it's a lot of the same types of struggles. Similarly, we've been talking about immigration to cover a lot of different things here, but we could easily break this down to how this song covers and applies to both immigrants and refugees, honestly.
Right.
Like the refugee crisis and the migrant crisis around the world, and the debates that are happening in lots of different countries, especially in Western countries. We have these debates happening that apply to refugees fleeing really terrible, dangerous situations, and immigrants who are trying to come make a name for themselves in their destination country, so to speak. So there are a lot of different issues we could discuss from so many different angles, but I love how this song just tries to encapsulate the immigrant experience, what it means to come from one place and go to another place and try to fight for your identity in a way that maintains integrity with who you are and where you've come from, but also claims an ownership and a stake in your new home. It says that in this introductory quote, it says, it's astonishing that in a country founded by immigrants, immigrant has somehow become a bad word. It's ridiculous that we would consider immigrant a bad word. We are indebted to immigrants as our country. We are supposed to be the great American melting pot that takes all of these threads of identities and cultures and ideas and perspectives and puts them together into a melting pot to create something beautiful and distinctive that still has the unique flavors of every one of those unique cultures. You don't have to whitewash America in order to have the united vision of what United States is supposed to be. We can have an America that stands up for the diversity and the beauty in that diversity. And I think one of the things this song tries to accomplish is giving a microphone to some of the many immigrant experiences that are fairly universal, or at least widespread enough that a lot of people have experienced this. And so I can't wait to dive into some more of these lyrics here.
Right. So this opening sound clip is spoken by J. Period, a remixer and producer. I couldn't find anywhere online whether this was something that he had said previously that they sampled here, or whether this was something that was recorded in studio for this. So I'm not sure there. If you know, please hit us up at Graphicast on Twitter or contact@graphicast.com. Let us know, because I'd like to know.
Right. I always assumed that it was just a sample from something else.
Right.
Like
I
it was
thought
an
so
interview.
too, but I thought I'd be able to easily find what that was. And
yeah, I've not researched that. I'm really curious.
So then we move on to a sample from the song that inspired this. Hercules Mulligan saying, and just like that, it's over. We tend to our wounded. We count our dead. John Lawrence, black and white soldiers wonder alike if this really means freedom. George Washington, not yet.
Taking those lines in the musical, they're so powerful already. But taking those lines and putting them into the context of immigrants fighting for representation and fighting for freedom is so potent.
Right.
This is a heavy truth that black and white soldiers, I mean, we could talk about people that are on the front lines of the conflict of the civil rights movement, people who are on the front lines of trying to push back against racism, push back against slavery, push back against a lot of cultural biases and stereotypes. And in that war we have for valuing diversity, in that war we have for humanity and for equality, there have been a lot of casualties.
That's right.
There have been a lot of people who have been fighting for freedom, fighting for what is right. And even though John Laurens was someone who was known as an abolitionist, dreaming of freedom for slaves, he didn't get to see that in his lifetime. It was a not yet reality for him. Yeah. He didn't get to see that. And even though people like Frederick Douglass, who's done an amazing job and is being recognized more and more, I notice, did a lot of wonderful things while he was alive. I know he's not alive, unlike some other people who may remain nameless for a moment on this podcast. I think we've already dropped his name, though. Even though these people who've been champions of civil rights, these people have done so much, but not a single one of them can say that their lifetime brought an end to the fight for equality, the fight for freedom, for all people, for liberty and justice for all, that thing that is avowedly American, the thing we pledge ourselves to when we, if you do say the Pledge of Allegiance. Liberty and justice for all is a battle that is often fought, but not yet won.
Right. I like that these lines open this song up with the idea of there's a war going on and there's injustice still to this day. And it puts you in that mindset, understanding that the fight for immigration and justice in that is still going on, and we have not yet seen a good resolution to it.
I also think that it's important that they sampled the line starting with Hercules Mulligan's quote, not just starting at John Laurens saying black and white soldiers wonder alike if it means freedom, not yet. They could have done that. But bringing in the first line there, saying just like that, it's over. We tend to our wounded. We count our dead. And my goodness, was 2016 a hard year for soldiers in this fight, for honestly to proving that Black Lives Matter. There are dead soldiers who are trying to do what was right to get recognition. They were trying to prove that Black lives were not systematically treated like they matter. And we see that we are now having to count higher and higher, and incredibly depressing numbers are rising because this is a war that is not yet won, but we will continue fighting battles for that war.
So Kanon comes in here saying, I got 1 job, 2 job, 3 when I need them. I got 5 roommates in this one studio, but I never really see them. Talking about that experience of working really hard, trying to survive, trying to make enough money so that you can live in this country. I mean, people come here to immigrate here to get away from even a harder situation, but that doesn't mean it's super easy here for them. That doesn't mean that they're just kicking their feet up. They often live with multiple jobs and multiple roommates and small studios and small living spaces just to survive and get by, sending money home sometimes even to try to take care of their families back home.
Yeah, there's this really unfair stereotype that I've encountered. I've not encountered it everywhere. I don't want to pretend that it's universal or anything, but there's this stereotype I've encountered personally in some of my conversations where people talk about immigrants as moochers or as lazy people. And there is nothing less lazy than the life of someone who had to work hard to get over here, work hard to stay here, work hard to pay the bills. And this guy is saying, Kanon is saying, I have 2 jobs regularly, 3 if I need it. If I get scrapped for cash, if I can't pay the bills 1 month, I can get other jobs. I'm working hard. And my other roommates, presumably they're working hard to do other stuff, pursue what they need, because he doesn't see them a lot in their 1-room studio apartment or whatever it is they're renting together. They are hard workers. And that's something that Hamilton, an American Musical, points out, is that it is difficult to prove yourself as an immigrant, as someone that is coming in as an outsider. And Kanon just starts off there saying, I'm a hard worker. I have tough living situations. And we all of us in this boat came to America for a specific reason.
Right. And he says right here, we came to America trying to get a lap dance from Lady Freedom. Obviously referencing the Statue of Liberty, which we all know the famous quote on the plaque inside, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. But that's not what they always see. They don't always see that. And the wording here is kind of weirded me out the first few times I heard it. Having it explained makes a little bit more sense. Saying that the lap dance part is just like, we were hoping to be welcomed with open arms. We were hoping they would be open with us and loving and caring. And
yeah. And when you consider that this is right next to Ellis Island with like immigrations, customs, and like people coming in, especially in Hamilton's day, trying to belong, like you're going right past the Statue of Liberty, seeing that. And often the welcoming message that immigrants get is not exactly that welcome of trying to make you feel happy. Lady Liberty is not exactly the dream of freedom that they expected and that they heard quoted about America isn't always the reality that they get.
Yeah, in this next line, they say, now Lady Liberty is acting like Hillary Banks with a prenup, which I like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air call out there.
Yeah, I love it too. That was, honestly, these lines together create two of my favorite lines in this mixtape when you have, and we all came to America trying to get a lap dance from Lady Freedom, but now Lady Liberty is acting like Hillary Banks with a prenup, Banks with a prenup. Like that portion just made me drop my jaw, made me excited to think about it because I do love Fresh Prince too.
Yeah.
But I was trying to think, and you may remember more about this because, I mean, we used to break into the Fresh Prince theme song together all the time. Like
I want to do it, but I'm not gonna. Restraint.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spent most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool.
No time.
Okay, too bad. So I remembered, I instantly recognized Hillary Banks' name. I didn't remember an episode where she had a prenup.
I don't think that's a thing. I think they're mostly just referencing that here's an attractive girl who's also shallow and self-centered, and of course isn't going to care about the guy that she's with more than arm candy or whatever, something that they can bring her.
That makes sense.
They're hoping to find someone loving, the country itself as a loving, welcoming country that can help them.
So they're looking for someone more maternal and sheltering,
a safe spot, a safe place where they can grow and do something, and then provide and give back.
Yeah, and
they're seeing is Hillary Banks, someone who's self-centered and like, well, no, I don't care about you, and I just whatever's good for me and not you, and I'm not going to help you, and I don't.
Yeah.
And yet the plaque says something completely different about who we welcome into our country.
And I can tell you right now, the reason I didn't go any deeper into trying to remember the Fresh Prince episodes was because when I dove into it a little bit, I remembered that Hillary Banks did have a significant other, Trevor, in the show at one point.
Oh, I forgot about
that
this.
she tried to, she was trying to get him to propose to her, and he was just about to. And one of the many moments when Fresh Prince of Bel-Air decided to go super emotional and deal with a dark topic like death, or like they also went into the loss of a father, an absent father, or kids feeling abandoned. Like there's a lot of heavy issues dealt with in Fresh Prince, such a fun show. But I remembered that one of the moments was when Hillary Banks had her significant other start to propose to her and then died in a tragic accident. And she felt guilt from that and a lot of weightiness to it. And to me, I was like, man, this was the song that was supposed to not be the depressing It's Quiet Uptown song. Yeah. I was not supposed to be as depressed by this. And so I went into that and I thought, oh man, if they're met with that type of tragedy when they're trying to come to America and they're met with someone, I mean, it's a totally different situation, but I was expecting an exciting trip down memory lane looking into what Fresh Prince was and trying to find an episode about her getting married again. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember being crushed. And I was trying to forget that. I blocked that out of my memory.
Yeah. And for those who are listening who aren't familiar, a prenup is an agreement signed prior to marriage that outlines the division of shared properties and arrangements of financial support in the case of a divorce. In pop culture, this is usually seen as an indication of a lack of confidence in one's partner, and sometimes characterizes them as fickle and unattached, knowing basically this could end any moment, so I want to make sure my stuff's safe. Yeah,
a prenuptial agreement saying, this is my stuff, that's your stuff, you can't divorce me and take my stuff.
Yeah, so Kanan is invoking this superficial girl with a prenup, and that's his impression of Lady Liberty.
And then he goes on to articulate the process by which he came to the United States here, where he says, man, I was brave, sailing on graves. Don't think I didn't notice those tombstones disguised as waves.
Right.
That line, I mean, knowing, like you said, that he was someone who left Somalia during their civil war. I mean, first, before I knew that, I was thinking about the Syrian refugees and the refugee crisis that came out of Syria in the last couple years. Really, it became an emotional moment when all of the world saw a kid wash up on the beach, having tried to escape the Syrian refugee crisis, who was trying to escape to a better life, and he washed up dead on the shore. And I remembered that moment, and I was thinking, how many more graves were on that ocean there, where you just have tombstones of waves.
Right.
There's no marker to commemorate them. There's no shrine in the middle of the ocean. There are no people stopping along the way to erect a monument to the travelers who died en route to safety. He's coming here knowing full well that this is the very journey that killed a lot of his brothers and sisters who did the same thing, made the same trip.
Even looking back towards Hamilton's time and before, of course, in the 4 centuries of the Atlantic slave trade, millions of enslaved Africans died making this journey across the ocean.
That's true.
Some statistics say about 15% of the Africans who made the journey died.
One of the reasons it was so emotional for me when I was preparing for this episode, knowing I'd need to talk about immigration and refugees and some of the current events that are happening, I found an article by the father of that Syrian refugee boy, Alan Kurdi. He said that, this is just from last September, he said, once my son's photo went around the whole world, the politicians said, after the deaths in my family, never again. Everyone claimed they wanted to do something because of the photo that touched them so much. But what is happening now? People are still dying, and nobody is doing anything about it. So the stakes are high, emotions are higher, and yet people like Kenan will still make the journey, hoping for a better life, hoping to escape the civil war that they're leaving behind, to find security, to find safety, to find the promise of freedom and a better life. And yet they know full well the danger, because so many of those waves have claimed people that went before them.
Yeah, and I like that Kenan here talks in the first person. Speaking of his own journey, when he was 13, he came over to New York after the escalation of the Somalia Civil War, and that he had friends even that died in that war. They were killed during that time. And on his way over, he was probably just thinking about that. I mean, how could you not know, if you know anything about the history, making that journey over, just thinking about how many people, refugees or slaves or anything, have died on these seas making this journey. And even escaping isn't always safe. He says, "I'm no dummy. Here's something funny. You can be an immigrant without risking your lives." And he'll go on to say, all you got to do is see the world in new eyes. And he almost opens up this idea that you can put yourself in their place. You can see where they've gone. You can see these journeys, and you can understand more of where immigrants and refugees have gone. You have to open your mind, though. You have to be willing to look at things from someone else's perspective.
And I know we need to move on past Kenan's stanza here because it's a longer song than this, but he has that line, crossing these borders with thrifty supplies, in the middle of that, the end of his stanza here. And it's a reference to how a lot of immigrants do have to cross borders with like little more than what's in their backpack or what they have there. Our friend Caleb on Twitter was recently discussing the conversation about a border wall in the United States. We're not going to get too much into that. It's not terribly relevant here. Ask us on Twitter what we think about it. But Caleb went on this tweet storm just telling us a story about a time when he worked at a border checkpoint on a mission trip last year. And I just want to read an excerpt of what he said. He said, "I worked at a border checkpoint on a mission trip last year. I didn't speak Spanish, so I did whatever I could. Made soup for people, helped in the shower station, watched little kids while the parents were doing immigration work, etc. Occasionally, I would get to sit and listen to the stories of people that were coming into the country through my friends translating. There was one woman whose story I still remember. She had a young son with cerebral palsy. I can't remember where she was from. She told us about how she had to leave her country because a local gang member burned her son with a hot poker. Why? For fun. This woman had her son when she was 16 years old and raised him on her own. She had to make a choice. the gang members continued to threaten her young son with cerebral palsy, she could stay and risk his life or take a chance on America. She chose hope, so she started her journey towards freedom. When someone from a southern country is making their way to immigration checkpoints, most times they don't own a car. The journey consists of bus rides and walking. One of the first buses wouldn't let this mother take her son's stroller onto the bus. This woman, this amazing woman, carried her 10-year-old son with cerebral palsy all the way to America. She did that, and there was still a chance that they would send her back. Immigration is already a tough process. This woman was in tears as she told her story, and I think she's the strongest person I ever met. I still think a lot about her story, and I pray that she and her son were allowed to stay. America is a beacon of freedom, just as it was for all our ancestors. But our president thinks we should build a wall. I was born in America because one of my ancestors immigrated here. Most Americans can say the same. Building a wall to keep people out? That's one of the most un-American things I can think of. And I said we wouldn't get political and talk about the wall, but the emotion in that story, I think, applies to the stories of this song as well. People who will risk everything, who will take as much risk as they've ever taken in their lives for the hope of a better future, the hope of something that we've promised as America, that give us your poor, your weary, your huddled masses. We've promised that. And the question is, will America fulfill that promise, or will Lady Liberty act like Hillary Banks with a prenup?
Yeah. Caleb's story was amazing. And since we've already mentioned a few of them, just quick shout out to the Odd Wonks out there, our online Twitter community, and further than Twitter, honestly. Check it out. Hashtag Odd Wonks. Join the family.
Check it out. So moving in to the next lines, we have the beginning of the chorus. You get the repeated line, immigrants, we get the job done. The line that gets a standing ovation, or at least some applause every time it's performed in the theater.
And then you get that repetition of, look how far I've come. Obviously describing a distance traveled, but also the accomplishments made by immigrants and what they've done and how they've built this country. And then it's also telling people to look and see how immigrants built your country. Look and see how far we've come as immigrants and what we've done, and open your eyes to that. I love that.
Yeah.
Lin-Manuel Miranda left a comment on this on the Genius page, basically saying this is the moment in Battle of Yorktown where Hamilton and Lafayette give the high five. And it's a nice reminder that many people who contribute to the prosperity of this nation aren't born here.
Mm-hmm.
So we then jump into our next verse by Snow the Product. It's a hard line when you're an import baby boy. It's hard times when you ain't sent for, which obviously references just how it is hard to immigrate into the country, especially when they're not asking you to come in. You're, of course, coming on your own volition to get out of a situation to do better for yourself or possibly your family that you're leaving behind.
Right. So, I mean, this song started off, Kanon obviously talked about his situation of having multiple jobs and living with a lot of people in a studio apartment. But a lot of his, I mean, the stanza we just came out of was about coming to the United States, the promise that we give as America and the hope that people have when they're immigrating. And then this stanza specifically is about once you're here, when you're an import baby boy, how is this life? Once you're in the United States, once you're here as an immigrant, what is that experience? And they talk about racism and the hard work and the oppression that a lot of people have towards immigrants, towards people who have migrated here through different means, and people come at them with pitchforks and treat them like the demonized other instead of as a core essential part of the American story.
Right. I like the two sides of that there, showing the mob mentality of chasing down the monster, the one who's harming you to keep yourself safe, the immigrants out there, but the pitchfork also maybe being an image for the type of jobs that immigrants often take, the farming jobs and these things that they often do that are quite necessary for our country and that most of us who are born here don't even want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
And here comes the other languages. I'm going to read the translations as we go. it starts off saying something like, and it started. There was some conversation about the official translations online I read, where the official translation said something, but then there was a few people commenting about how it could mean more than that and maybe even more relevant than that. And here with this, I'm not going to read the original languages because I'm going to get it wrong, guys.
Yeah.
Saying something like, and it started, could also be like a revolutionary start. Like this is where things started. It could also mean like, this is when the hit the fan.
I see. Yeah.
It says, and it started and they awoke. The alarm went off a while ago. Those who want search, but they label us as hoodlums. And I should mention it goes back and forth between this. I skipped the English part that is actually sung there saying it's a whole awakening. The alarm went off a while ago. Those who want search, but they label us hoodlums. I
appreciate that they say, and they awoke in Spanish, and then he emphasizes that by saying in English, it's a whole awakening. It's almost as if, I mean, obviously he's talking about the alarm went off. It's like you're waking up, starting your day, doing something. But there's also hashtag stay woke, hashtag get woke. Like, which is, be woke is to be aware of the injustices in the world, to be aware of what's happening. And I think that there are a lot of people in the world who need to wake up in that sense.
Yeah. And that apparently, I didn't know this before, but it might have even originated with Snow here. This is her trademark and has been since 2007. Being woke is her thing that she like pushes forward. So I really like that idea that I don't know if she started it or she just pushed it really hard, but I like this idea that she's here talking about that idea of waking up and being woke in our current society.
Right. And she's so wonderful the way she so seamlessly transitions from the Spanish to the English back and forth, the rapping here. I've obviously not listened to a lot of Spanish rap because it's not the language I understand. But when I started hearing it, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh my goodness, that's perfect. Of course you would rap in your native tongue or in Spanish or in the language of the country you immigrated from, because it's the perfect device inside of this song.
And another translation note on this word hoodlums here, I read online that this could actually be translated more as slacker, which is the idea, again, of the immigrants being lazy, people coming to our country and being lazy. And I kind of like that both sides of that reading there, where they're either dangerous to us or they're lazy and not doing anything to provide for our country and give back.
Right. And then Snow pushes back saying that we're the same ones hustling on every level. Like, we're working hard. We are not the ones that are just lazy, but we're actually trying to accomplish something, trying to do something. And I mean, if you take it as hoodlums, we could go all day about just the connotations with the word hustling there, I think. But I take this as she's working super hard.
Yeah.
It's something that she's not the lazy slacker.
Yeah, and that's the great irony is, as we've touched on already, people call them slackers and push back that way, but then they also say they're stealing our jobs. But that's because these are undesirable jobs at undesirable wages that none of us as residents of this country would want to work for. So they get pushed off to there, and then we yell at them for stealing our jobs. Man, it's tough to talk about. We're getting really political here because it's necessary.
Well, this song is political.
Yeah, there's no way to not do it.
This is an issue, and
we could talk on and on about it too.
I think we'll just have to just say where we stand politically on all of this by the end of the episode. But this is about struggle. This song is about how complicated and how complex human stories are. And this verse that Snow is singing, she's going back and forth saying, we're the ones hustling on every level. Then transitions to Spanish, says, better buckle your shoes. Walk a mile in our shoes is said in English there. Like, walk a mile in the shoes of an immigrant before you start attacking immigrants. Walk a mile in the shoes of someone struggling before you start attacking them for having a struggle. Be willing to hear the stories of people that are coming before you start demonizing everyone that is coming. If you know these people, it is a lot harder to hate them.
Right. And she then breaks down that very translation that we just went through, saying, I've been scoping you dudes. Y'all ain't been working like I do. I'll outwork you. It hurts you. You claim I'm stealing jobs, though. That narrative, again, that these people are stealing jobs, even though they're doing jobs that we're not even willing to do.
And this wordplay is fantastic. Peter Piper claimed he picked him. He just underpaid Pablo. That is such a
there's
potent
so
word.
much in there.
Because we all know that Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And we understand that is what we say. It just takes on that common cliche and that common tongue twister and says, you know what actually happened? It wasn't Peter that picked those. It was actually a person named Pablo that was working in the tomato fields, doing the actual picking and doing all of that. But you know what? He was underpaid, just worked for a couple dollars a day, did what he could to work hard, but there isn't a paper trail to Pablo. He was living in the shadows. He's America's ghostwriter. The credit's only borrowed. So Peter Piper gets all the credit. He gets to have the white person name, who gets to have the name of someone of privilege in American society. And the Pablos in this example, in this particular metaphor, are left living in the shadows, doing the hard work, but they do not get the credit for it.
Right. She's almost saying, keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting.
Exactly.
In that line, but there ain't a paper trail when you're living in the shadows, I think references many immigrant jobs being paid under the table illegally, trying to, work outside of the system because they can't get their papers in order for one reason or another, because they can't get a legitimate a job for one reason or another, coming into this country trying to survive and do what it takes.
And the fact that there's no paper trail on some of those jobs means multiple things. And it obviously has some, I mean, like all things, for the immigrant side of things, it has pros and cons. So if the people came here illegally, then there's less danger of them being caught or exported. But it also means there's a lot more potential in this type of a setting for exploitation, because there's no labor union for people who are paid under the table illegally, people who are not paid with their wages being tracked. There's not a paper trail for the people working in the tomato vineyards. It's not a vineyard if it's a tomato, but the people working in the tomato fields and on farms trying to do these types of jobs. If you don't have the paper backing it up and the legal background so that you can stand up for your rights, if you aren't fluent enough in English even to be able to stand up for yourself, you often get exploited. Right. You often get taken advantage of, and it's only a matter of time before you are just that person in the shadows that is taken advantage of, and people start borrowing the credit for the work you're doing.
Exactly. And read in context with those next lines, you could even read it that paper trail is the credit. It's there's no written history of what the immigrants have done. It's always the other people who claim the credit, who are standing on top of the slaves saying, oh, look at this great thing I did. We're like, no, we know who's really doing the planting.
Yeah.
It's that idea. And it says America's ghostwriters. A ghostwriter, of course, is somebody who writes a book in the name of somebody else. So this is the idea that immigrants came in and did all this hard work, and it was claimed by other people. And that credit's only borrowed. It's almost like that calling for what she's about to say here. It's only a matter of time before the checks all come in, saying that eventually something's got to give. All these immigrants come in. Eventually people are realizing, hey, the White House was built by slaves.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like there's so much in this idea of what they do for our country. There's so many great people who immigrated to America and did amazing things.
Yeah, I really appreciate that take on it. When I first heard this, and I think the way it hits me a lot of the times was not so much in that line of the metaphorical messages, but when it says it's a matter of time before the checks all come, but immigrants, we get the job done. Like, they don't have the right to say, hey, it's 2 weeks, deposit that money in my account. It's a matter of time before you actually get paid for the work you're doing.
Yeah.
You are working hard, but immigrants they get the job done. They're going to do it. They're going to focus on what it takes to do the job and to do the thing, even if they have to wait around a little while. It's a matter of time before they get the credit that they're deserved, the checks that they are supposed to be able to live off of. And so physically speaking, that's one angle on it. But then, immigrants have been contributing to the American narrative since there was an American narrative. This is all of North America, not just the United States. Immigrants have been a part of this story, and we don't always give them the credit.
And I wonder, because of the close parallel here, if this is any reference to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, where he says, in a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. And America wrote a check that came back, marked insufficient funds, but they refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation.
Such a great line.
Lin-Manuel Miranda said of this line that these are brilliant lyrics by Snow the Product that crystallizes the whole thing for every person you read about in your history books. There are untold millions who shape our history, whose story goes untold. It's that simple and that complex. He has such a great way with words.
He does. He should write something.
Moving on to our third verse here, we have Riz MC coming in with a new take on this, looking at it from a different perspective, looking at it from a perspective of the people in the country looking out at the immigrants. He comes in and says, AOA, immigrants, we don't like that. Here, speaking from the perspective of anti-immigrant citizens. Riz, a native Londoner of South Asian descent, is acutely aware that the UK has experienced a sharp increase in hate crimes and anti-immigrant sentiment and insular nationalism this year in the wake of Brexit and everything that's been going on over there.
Oh, yeah.
And his opening line here, that AOA, is kind of, a way to start a rap, freestyling, jumping in like that. But it could also be a homophone for AOA, the letters, which is a common shorthand for the Islamic greeting, meaning peace be upon you. As a Muslim, Riz seems to be playing this hypothetical anti-immigration person for a fool by having him open his lines with this Muslim saying.
Oh, that's interesting. I spent a long time trying to figure out what AOA stood for when I listened to this. I didn't think of AOA like he was. I mean, I should have.
Like
that should have been the
and
A.
yo and A.
Right. I didn't think of AOA. I thought of AOA.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that connotation. I appreciate that.
And he says, nah, they don't play British Empire Strikes Back.
That language there with the Star Wars reference and the British Empire. So good.
Of course, again, the idea of the British Empire striking back, heavily focused here on Brexit, the UK Independence Party. They beating us like 808s and hi-hats, of course, percussion instruments.
Yeah.
Here, talking about how immigrants are coming in and beating on the people who live there.
Yeah, you also hear on the track, the hi-hat has a little bit of a riff right after the reference to hi-hats. It's fun to listen to.
At our own game of invasion, but this ain't Iraq. I like that British invasion language there. And then, of course, talking about the invasions of Iraq and looking for oil.
Yeah, and so if this is coming from the perspective, kind of the tongue-in-cheek perspective of an anti-immigrant citizen, it's saying that, hey, they're beating us at our own game of invasion. Like, we're supposed to be the ones invading people. We're supposed to be the ones that are actually colonizing, so to speak, and doing that. But these are people who are trying to come in here and invade us. It's the fear-mongering, the idea that we're being invaded. And then it asks that question, who are these fugees? What do they do for me? Who are these refugees? What do they do for me? But contribute new dreams, taxes, and tools, swagger, and food to eat.
Which I like that Fuji's call out there. I'm hoping that's what they were going for.
Not Fuji apples.
I do love the Fuji's.
Yeah, the Fuji. Oh, yeah.
But, Lauryn Hill, Wyclef Jean.
I gotcha, yes.
But this line here saying taxes and tools, swagger, and food to eat, where it talks about here that people complain about immigrants coming in and taking, but they don't, like we mentioned earlier, they don't look at what they're actually giving and how much we live off of what immigrants do for our countries.
Yeah, and I mean, we've hinted at illegal immigration already while we were talking about this during Snow's verse, but I mean, legal immigration is a huge part of this. I mean, whether you're coming legally or illegally, you have a story to tell and a struggle to discuss. I mean, it's something important to recognize when we walk a mile in their shoes. But often, immigrants really are paying into the tax system, even though people like to complain about how my taxes are paying for them to visit the emergency room if they get injured, or my taxes dollars are paying for them to drive on the roads, even though they're not paying taxes. But really, immigrants pay a lot in taxes. And when they're here on visas, work visas, or when they come with green cards and they're living here, so-called green cards, like you have people who are contributing to the system who often don't benefit from the system in the sense that a lot of people pretend that they do. One of the things that this song should do is make us raise the question of whether immigrants contribute more or whether immigrants take more from the American story. And I submit, as this song does, that immigrants contribute to and literally are the American story. Immigrants to the United States are the American story. They're not the distraction from it.
He says, cool, they flee war zones, but the problem ain't ours, which a sentiment we see right in our country right now with refugee crises going on. And we've been seeing it for quite a while with different refugee crises.
Man, if you are a human and if you live on this earth, then this problem is yours.
Yeah.
If people are fleeing war zones and they don't have a safe place to live or to raise their kids, then this problem is yours. This problem is ours. This problem matters. I understand the let's take care of our own people first. Let's take care of the problems at home first. But there are enough resources in this world to take care of each other, to take care of all of us. And if we don't have that same attitude of love extended to others, then it doesn't matter that we have that attitude of love towards our closest friends and family. We have to be people of love that are extending the Lady Liberty message of peace and promise of hope and protection to the rest of the world, because this is our problem. You can't say the problem ain't ours.
And he continues in this next line to talk about how some of the people that have that same mentality, that it's not their problem, are people that played a hand in creating the problem that the refugees are trying to flee from, saying, even if our bombs landed on them like the Mayflower.
Yeah, so the idea that, I mean, as the United States, we've been involved in drone strikes. We've been involved in a lot of things that influenced situations in the Middle East, especially, and yet we're not taking credit for anything there. We're not giving shelter to these people. Obviously, America is actually offering a lot of refugees homes. We have a lot that we have done as the United States, and I'm not going to discredit that at all. But we've done a lot, but there is more to do.
Right.
I want to jump back into the lyrics in a second, but when the temporary travel ban was issued as an executive order from Donald Trump's administration, I was calling my representative, my senators, I was writing to people, emailing. I made a few phone calls. I sent an email to the mayor's office in Oklahoma City, though, because I know I've done some volunteer work here locally in Oklahoma City with some organizations that help refugees placed here in Oklahoma City. This is a city where the United States government places refugees into safe places. It's not a secret. It's known there. Now, some of the locations of where they are placed in the city is secretive, not super public knowledge, but I knew that this is a place, Oklahoma City is a place where refugees are supposed to be welcomed and feel at home. So I said, Mayor Cornett, where do you stand on protecting and welcoming the refugees and their families that live here in our city already? Where do you stand? What is your position on this, and what will you do? And I want to kind of read to you the email that I got back from the chief of staff of the mayor's office, because he made it very clear where our mayor stood, and I really appreciated it. He said, "Hey, thanks for the message. Mayor Cornett has often said everyone is welcome in Oklahoma City, and there is a period at the end of that sentence." He also gave me a link to a message, a statement that the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which our mayor is currently the president of, they issued a statement about the executive order, and it was a really interesting statement. You can read about it online. You can Google it. But I love that. Everyone is welcome in Oklahoma City, and there is a period at the end of that sentence. It was important for me to know that about my civic leadership, that they were invested in making this a safe space for people fleeing unsafe spaces. But that idea, even if our bombs landed on them like the Mayflower, I actually misheard that line the first several times I listened to this rap. I heard it as, even if our bombs landed like them on the Mayflower, like a reference to the fact that there are some people here in the United States who have been here ever since the Mayflower landed with the Pilgrims, but because of the color of their skin, they're seen as an outsider. Because of their faith, they might be seen as an outsider. And so it's an idea that like there's a community of people who came here at the very beginning of our nation, but they're still treated like outsiders. And that's not at all what the lyrics actually say. But it's like if our bums landed here back when the Mayflower landed, I was thinking of that as the line. But
Right.
I mean, reading it in the actual lyrics
still a good
makes
point,
more
too.
sense.
Yeah.
It was just, I heard it differently.
Yeah, I do like this idea of the Mayflower being brought up, though. The idea that we came to America and we spread disease, and we, of course, later on would go on to like massacre the Native Americans and move them around.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what big empires have done in the past, and that's what cultures have done when invading other cultures. And still to this day, things like that happen where America goes off and, like you mentioned, goes into other countries and creates these problems. But when all hell breaks loose, we're not willing to help the cleanup. Always.
Yeah.
There's also an invocation of a Malcolm X speech here where he said, "We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us," which I think is really interesting. He's talking about slavery and how slaves were brought here and the rock was landed on them. It's not like they were coming to this free country. They were forced here and it landed on them.
Yeah.
Again, speaking of a country doing something to a group of people and then not wanting to clean up its mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's an interesting juxtaposition there because we're talking about people who come here of their own volition for the promise of hope and the promise of a future, who choose to come to the United States. We're talking about American immigration a lot, but I think a lot of these principles relate to people who immigrate to other Western countries or places around the world. But specifically in the United States, when people come here, we're talking about this idea of choice, people choosing to come here. But with that Malcolm X quote, we acknowledge that there are a lot of people who were forced to come here, and their descendants are here now because they didn't get a choice in whether they came here or not. And yet some of their descendants are still treated like outsiders.
He goes on to say, "Buckingham Palace or Capitol Hill, blood of my ancestors had that all built." Again, the idea of the White House was built by slaves, that speaking more of than just the buildings, of course, using them as reference points for the whole country, for the whole area, the whole system, that immigrants have done a lot and have built us up to be what we are. We have immigrants all throughout our judiciary system. There's people all in all offices who have immigrated. And so without immigration, we've lost a lot in our countries.
Absolutely. And I appreciate, like, that's the thing I was talking about with it's Buckingham Palace or Capitol Hill. It's whether you're in Great Britain or whether you're in the United States, we are seeing this type of attitude towards immigration around the world right now. It's not just a distinctly American bias. It's kind of a big deal right now. And so in addition to kind of the reference to building the White House, slaves building the White House and all of that, he says it's the contributions to the buildings we built. It's the ink you print on your dollar bills, oil you spill, thin red lines on the flag you hoist when you kill. It's the blood of my ancestors, he says, that helped to contribute to all of those things.
Right. And speaking of the red lines on the flags, obviously, American flag, British flag, multiple different flags there, the inks on the dollar bill, just again, referencing this American dream, even talking specifically about America, but of course, we're talking the more worldly way as well, built by immigrants, and yet we withhold it from them more often than not.
Yeah, we talked about that when we were looking at Mount Vernon a lot, when we had our episode and we were talking about how slaves helped to build the extravagant house, and they didn't get to live in the extravagant house. They had slave quarters that were pitiful.
And then he tracks his own journey that he made. Hindustan, which is a commonly used name for India by Hindi speakers, Pakistan to London. This is the line that Riz MC's family went. His grandparents were originally from India and moved to Pakistan after partition. In the 70s, Riz's parents moved from Karachi to London, where Riz was born. And he says, to a galaxy far from their ignorance. Again, maybe a Star Wars reference here since he was in Star Wars.
To a galaxy far, far away.
But in context, this is a voice of a dream for one day for immigrants to see us moving way past this ignorance and finding a way to do this thing right.
Right. The idea that we've struggled so much, we've been taken advantage of for so long, and we've been ignored for so long. But we just say, look how far I've come. That type of optimism is the type of optimism we were discussing earlier in this episode, where even though someone has gone through tragedy and heartbreak in their lives, look around. Look around at how lucky you are to be alive right now. Look how far you've come in this journey, and be able to appreciate that in itself.
He says, "'Cause immigrants, we get the job done."
High five.
And then we move on to verse 4, Residente. Residente here is going to be rapping in Spanish. I'm going to again be reading the translations and talking about them as we go. He says, "By land or by water, false identity, we jump over walls or float on rafts." That talks about the idea of the risk that's being taken, the travel to get to America here specifically, maybe even from South America coming to America, more of what Residente would be familiar with. He says, "We fight like Sandino in Nicaragua."
I don't know a lot about that controversy, but wasn't that the Cesar Sandino? Wasn't he a guerrilla leader in that conflict? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, he fought against the U.S. and their incursion into Nicaragua. And Sandino expelled the U.S., but was killed by a newly imposed pro-U.S. dictatorship that would go on to rule the country for 40 years. Despite his short-lived campaign, he remains a potent national symbol akin to Robin Hood or Che Guevara.
Right.
To fight like Sandino then carries this inference of fighting against overwhelming odds whilst being largely under-equipped.
So this is to continue the Star Wars metaphors, this is the rebels that are bonding together, trying to overthrow an empire of oppressors.
Yeah, definitely so. He says, "We are like plants that grow without water." Bring up that biblical language there that the person is like a tree planted by streams of water which yield fruit in its season. Yeah. And that they don't have water to grow. They're having to move. They're having to survive while moving. They can't be planted necessarily.
Yeah, and they're like plants that have to grow without any outside encouragement. That no one is pouring into them. No one is saying, "Hey, let me give you the advantage in life." These are people who are coming from disadvantage. These are people who don't have the privilege of being able to say that I started out with the advantage. I had people pouring into me. I had great people that were giving me large loans to start my business. I had people that were parents that were encouraging me and paying for my college or paying for my shelter. They don't have external encouragement and growth. They have external opposition. They have external pressure, and they have to grow in a habitat that is hostile rather than one that is going to promote growth without a lot of struggle.
He says, "Without an American passport, because half of Gringolandia is really Mexican terrain."
Yeah, I've heard that word Gringolandia. I didn't realize that was just the
Gringoland.
Yeah, Gringoland.
People. Because a majority of the American Southwest was previously under Spanish control.
Yeah, it really was. And it's going to be interesting to talk about some of this westward expansion and Aaron Burr himself getting some journeys into some of the western territories and Thomas Jefferson purchasing a lot of that. I'd like to dive into some of the Louisiana Purchase, but then also some of the real interesting moments of American history when we did go westward into some Mexican terrain that we've now claimed as the United States.
He says one has to be a real cabron, which swear words don't translate directly necessarily, but the idea is SOB, MF, or something like that. A big jerk of a person. Mm-hmm. He says, "We plant the tree and they reap the fruit." Again, talking the idea that they're the ones who do the work when everyone else claims the credit.
Right.
"We're the ones who cross. Here we come to look for the gold that was stolen." And when he says, "We are the ones who cross," one of the other interesting translation notes I came across is that this could mean we are that which they crossed, referring to the U.S. annexation of Mexican territory and its invasion of Puerto Rico, saying that they crossed us. They came over our borders, which would tie into the next line talking about this gold that was stolen, that Spanish conquistadors who came to America looking for the gold and it ended up colonizing the land, as well as America's status to immigrants as this golden opportunity land.
So he's not saying that we're gold diggers, but we ain't messing with no. So it's, again, emphasizing the way we have, as a lot of, I'm speaking as privileged Americans who didn't have to go through the same struggle. A lot of us, we have benefited from the privilege we have, and a lot of that is on the back of people who had to come here in a difficult way and struggle and work hard. And our privilege didn't come from nowhere. It came from someone having to sacrifice a while back, or someone being oppressed or something. But it's the idea that they had to struggle, and sometimes we get our privilege handed to us on a golden platter, and we just have to acknowledge that.
He goes on to say, we have more tricks than the secret police. We packed our entire house in one suitcase. With a pick, a shovel, and a rake, we built you a castle. Again, the idea that they built this country. They built up the places that they go into.
Sounds like he crossed the border with thrifty supplies.
Yeah. He says, how's that chorus go again, Cabron? And then the chorus,
Immigrants, we get the job done. I love that he ends with that. Like, it's that breaking the third wall almost. Third wall? The third dimension. Breaking the fourth wall of the lines where he says, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of a song. How's that chorus go again?
And it goes back into that repetition. Look how far I come. Immigrants, we get the job done. And then the ending, not yet. Again, reminding us from George Washington here that the work hasn't been fully done. There's still a lot more to do. And that's going to take us to our next song.
I like that these three songs that we've just discussed have that kind of, I mean, the way we've at least discussed them, they have for me this shared theme of moving through tragedy, sharing the story of how far you've come, looking around at what you've accomplished with your life and what you have to live for and what you have to celebrate, and understanding the story of where you've come from and the story of where you are and what it is that you've overcome to get there. This next song obviously changes tones a little bit.
Right. We're going to get a little bit more lighthearted on the mixtape here with Jimmy Fallon talking about his singing lessons.
Yes. So he says that he is classically trained. He's not a Broadway performer, but he is classically trained. By that, he means that he's trained by this guy out of his basement named Ed Classically. And classically is another. His joke is so funny.
Yeah. So this is, of course, featuring the Roots and produced by the Roots. Questlove said that he got his fantasy of going full vintage here. He said half of the Beatles catalog is part blues, part Chuck Berry rock and roll, and a lot of Tin Pan Alley, Gershwin era Broadway stuff. His albums don't personally give him the room to do his version of like getting better. So this allowed him to do at least a 4-minute moment of what would Ringo do? What would George Martin do? And he said that was probably the most fun that they had.
I appreciate that it's the Roots that are doing this with Jimmy Fallon, because I mean they perform together every single night,
right?
Like, on his show. I mean, they have such wonderful chemistry together already, and I mean he's hilarious. Jimmy Fallon is. I want to hang out with him. I want to do some stuff, but he's also really talented.
Definitely. So, I guess I didn't introduce Jimmy Fallon, but for those who don't know, comedian, television host, actor, singer, writer, and also a producer. And a host on The Tonight Show now with The Roots.
And among his accomplishments, you could also list he's a great, really close friend to Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, that's true.
I love when they just hang out and you see them just singing back and forth, because Jimmy Fallon can, I won't say hold his own against JT, but I mean, he has a lot of singer friends. And in this song, he starts off with his comfort zone, I think, cracking a joke, saying, right, I'm not a trained Broadway singer, but I was trained classically trained. By that I mean I was trained by this guy named Ed Classically. Also, classically is another pronunciation. And he goes on and he says there's this breathing technique that allows me to hit all these high notes and these belting lyrics. It's just and then he goes on and he has this breathing technique that he starts out with.
And then we actually do get to hear him sing the song, and beautifully so. Really well done. And you actually can, speaking of The Tonight Show, go look up online and see him with Jonathan Groff performing parts of the song on The Tonight Show, which is really fun.
That's so good. Yes. The original King George III right there next to Jimmy Fallon.
But of course, this is another cover song. Nothing really to say about the lyrics. So we're going to move on to our next song, Helpless by Ashanti. This song features Ja Rule and was produced by Frequency. Ashanti is a singer-songwriter, record producer, dancer, and actress known for her debut album featuring the hit song Foolish, and known for doing a lot of duets with famous rappers like Ja Rule, Fat Joe, and Notorious B.I.G. She quickly became a sensation, gracing covers of magazines and dominating urban radio. She built her reputation on those duets, like I mentioned, and it didn't take long for her to make a name for herself, with her debut album topping the Billboard album charts, just as her single, Foolish, was topping the Hot 100 chart. Ja Rule has dominated the Billboard charts as well, from 1999 to 2005.
I was going to say, I hadn't heard of Ja Rule before this album since I think high school.
Right.
I didn't know if he had done anything since or anything. He hadn't done anything new since.
Ja Rule has, of course, released many notable albums. Veni Vidi Vici, Pain is Love, The Last Temptation, often partnered with Ashanti in his songs and helped create hit songs such as Always on Time, Mesmerize, Wonderful, so on and so forth. Ja Rule is also known for his beef with 50 Cent, Eminem, and Aftermath Entertainment, which he is thought to have lost and which led to his downfall in the music business, which I'm assuming why he's been more silent.
Oh, interesting. I did not know about that conflict.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but it does make me want to go research some more.
Oh, man.
Frequency, the producer here, is a producer and DJ for a group called Slaughterhouse, and used to be in a group called The Understudies with MC producer Sixth Sense. This is another cover song, here describing the first encounter of Alexander Hamilton and Eliza, all the way up to their marriage. Although a few changes in the lyrics have been made to apply to Ja Rule and Ashanti in the song, most references to Hamilton characters have been left actually this time. And it's interesting here that Lin-Manuel Miranda got these two to do this song because he actually wrote this song with them in mind and structured it after duets that they did in the late 90s and early aughts.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that this song was modeled after them at all.
Right,
I knew that they had collaborated a bunch.
And of course, later on in the song, he does the Ja Rule grunt in the original Broadway.
Oh man, everything makes sense now. It actually hit me a little bit strange when I first heard Ja Rule and Ashanti singing this together, because they obviously have wonderful chemistry with each other. But this is one of those things I had to keep fighting as a huge fan of the original cast recording. Whenever there was a cover, I was like, this wasn't my Hamilton. You aren't my Eliza. But they have such wonderful chemistry together that it worked for me.
Definitely so.
I don't see him as a Hamilton or her inherently as an Eliza. I mean, it's not that they couldn't be those roles, but I just don't see that. But together, singing to each other, I think they work.
I do like this line here. This hasn't changed from the musical, but is in a modern text of the mixtape. Everybody's dancing on the bass, top volume, grind to the rhythm as we wine and dine, which was moving, of course, this idea of how ballroom dances worked back then and trying to bring that spirit to it, but in the context of today. And here you have it in the mixtape with Ja Rule and Ashanti in the way that they would talk about it now in the club.
Right. It's a little, that phrase is a little more at home here on the mixtape than it is in the musical.
Right. And there are a few changes in the lyrics, like "Baby, this one's mine," Ashanti saying to herself, and a few other things that take away the continuity. Of course, the scene with Hamilton and Angelica Schuyler meeting his wife to be is unnecessary and on a mixtape.
Yeah.
And then changing slight things like laughing at this girl because she wants to form a harem. No, I ain't sharing.
Yeah, I guess when you don't have multiple female roles singing the song, say, nah, I ain't sharing is the thing that you'd have the narrator do. You don't have someone else saying, all I'm saying is if you really loved me, you would share him. Like, you're not having the dialogue between the two sisters in that moment. You're having the monologue of this person saying, I'm not going to share this guy.
Right. And then there are some things left in, like we mentioned, like Peggy confides in me, Angelica tried to take a bite of me, that don't quite make sense as much on a mixtape. And Ja Rule switches here in one place where it was normally said, we'll get a little place in Harlem. He changes it to Queens, giving a shout out to his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, my father died, my mama cried, I grew up buck wild. I tried looking up information on Ja Rule's father, and apparently no one has that, because there was people on like message boards and stuff discussing how they couldn't find out if this was actually a biographical thing. All we could actually find out, these people that I was researching from could find out, I was merely reading their notes, to be honest, was that he was raised the only child of his mother after his sister died from breathing complications when he was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
But most people just couldn't find any information on his father.
Interesting.
And then he says, and so long as I'm alive, Ashanti, swear to God, you'll never feel so.
Helpless.
And I do like that they do the outro chorus there together, which is different than in the Broadway musical, of course.
Right.
Saying that they are both helpless to each other.
I really appreciate that, because a lot of the times we will, in our literature, characterize the heroine as helpless and in need of being saved and rescued, and the guy gets to be the one that comes in on a horse, riding in to save the day. And really, that does damage to both genders when you have just totally gendered emotional responses like that, where men feel like I have to be this macho person, and so my masculinity is fragile. If I actually have emotions, if I feel helpless, then I'm not a real man. But Ja Rule can sing about being helpless, and so that I should be able to too. You don't have to have masculinity that's so fragile. And likewise, women can be strong, and even when you feel helpless, that doesn't mean you're a weak person. That means maybe that your situation is hard, or maybe that you're dealing with these emotions, and that's heavy, it's big, but we can all express these emotions. These are emotions of people that are in love, and emotions of people that, these are emotions of people, not emotions of just one gendered response to something. Love isn't gendered. It is love is love is love is love.
Absolutely.
And appropriately, right before we take a break from this extra long episode today, as it has turned out, we are going to cover the interlude, Take a Break.
This song was put together by Ill Mind, of course, featuring the original vocals by Philippa Sue here. Ill Mind is the Grammy-nominated multi-platinum music producer for Kanye West, J. Cole, Drake, 50 Cent, and more, founder of Roseville Music Group and Blapkits. This song is a bit of a break for the mixtape itself, and has Ill Mind making a trap remix of Eliza Counting in French.
Deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six, sept, huit, neuf.
I'm not going to try that.
I didn't do well, but...
Ill Mind himself said, back when they were working on the Hamilton Mixtape, probably late 2015, he got a call from Lynn out of the blue. He was in the studio and he was like, hey, Ill, I'm doing this Ham for Ham contest, and we have this amazing dancer that's going to dance for the people who are trying to get tickets, and we need a beat for it. I have this song and I want you to remix it. I really want you to make a turned up version of it. And he told Lynn, hell yeah, I'll do it. Let me know what you need and what you have in mind. So they got together a couple of ideas back and forth, and he said he literally just stopped what he was doing, spent the next 3 or 4 hours working on the track, and sent it back. And Lynn was like, this is crazy. I love it. So he actually ended up using it for Ham on YouTube, and then loved it so much he put it here on the mixtape.
Can we talk about how cool it is when celebrities just have other celebrities that they just talk to? Yeah. Like they're normal people. Like I would just text you one day and hang out with you, but he's like, hey.
What's up, Lynn? What are you doing?
What's up?
So that's going to end that song there. And on that note, actually, I just wanted to talk just for a moment about how I just recently got CISO, the TV program. It's like Hulu or things like this, but it has Freestyle Love Supreme, the TV show with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his freestyle group. I've only watched the first 2 episodes so far, but it's fantastic, and I do recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. Would Freestyle Love Supreme again?
I suggest a watch party at your house.
Yes, my house.
Everybody that's listening, come over to Vinton's house.
I wish I wasn't so busy because I wanted to watch it a lot more, and I only watched 2 episodes while I should have been sleeping in bed on my iPad. My old janky iPad that barely works because it's the first generation.
Well, maybe when I come over to watch it with you, we can watch it on the TV instead of in your bed on your iPad.
Or, we can watch it in my bed on my iPad too.
Cozy up together.
Where is this podcast going? That is all we have time for today. We have covered many much song for many much minutes. And hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of that. Hopefully we didn't get too political for you, step on too many toes. But we will be back in 2 weeks, probably with our next coverage of the Hamilton Mixtape continuing further. Maybe we'll decide to do something else special in between there. We'll see. Until then, remember, if you'd like to support the Graphomania Podcast Network, check out patreon.com/graphocast, GRAPHOCAST. This is completely listener supported. You'll get some special goodies for doing so. If you'd like to get into contact with us, at Graphocast on Twitter, contact@graphocast.com for email. Personally on Twitter, I'm at FleshEater.
And I'm at Alpha Knight.
And we will see you in 2 weeks if the world is still standing.
And it doesn't turn upside down?
And it doesn't turn upside down. We would probably fall off of it then.
I don't know. It might be.
I don't know how spheres work.
2017 is hard so far. Maybe it is upside down. We need to turn it right side up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Get woke.
Hashtag. This has been a Graphomania production. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to graphocast.com, GRAPHOCAST.com. Follow us on Twitter at Graphocast and like the Graphomania page on Facebook for news and updates.